Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Spin It Social Hour. My name is Stefan Kaplan, and it is an absolute pleasure to be here with you today on this Saturday. After a week of no power almost here in Ramsey, New Jersey, I am thrilled to be here with you and not have to do this from a local library with a mask on. So thank you for being here with us. And welcome to the Spin It Social Hour. I am a social media and visual strategist and a former supervising photo editor at the New York Times. This is the Spin It Social Hour, and it is a labor of love born out of care and concern for our photo community. When I started this live stream, I decided to go full throttle with this multimedia production to help our photo community who has been hit so hard by this pandemic and the resulting economic crisis. I had to reach out, I had to put this together, and I had to roll with it to help them out because everybody is just losing work and clients and other things. And it is my pleasure to bring them on every week to tell their stories, to show their work, and to let you learn more about them. I have been a social media and visual strategist with the likes of the Pulitzer Prizes, also AARP, Encore.org, and many universities that I've coached at and also lectured at. So it is a pleasure once again to be here. Today's guest, oh my, I am so excited. I am honored to have Vincent Laforet here. Everybody knows him as Air Laforet. He's an old buddy of mine from the New York Times. We worked together many years, and now Vincent is a incredible digital and filmmaker out there, doing wonderful things with brands of all sizes. So I am going to show you a great slideshow that I put together of his work, the buildup that he deserves. So let's get to it, and then we'll bring Vincent on. Vincent Laforet is a Pulitzer Prize-winning photographer and critically acclaimed director. His approach to aerial photography has been singled out as one of the most unique and interpretive amongst photographers today. Vincent's career was kickstarted when he landed an internship at Reuters while studying at Northwestern University. He gained national attention with his post-9/11 coverage of the Middle East for the New York Times. As the youngest staff photographer in New York Times history, Vincent has worked with the very best companies, partners, and technicians over the past 3 decades around the world to produce cutting-edge imagery, capturing several hundred megapixel images from the air or the ground, or shooting 8K footage with a 12-camera array. Laforet Visuals has done it all. The group of mad artists and technicians that Vincent works with have more often than not pioneered the cutting-edge solutions or techniques they employ. They've even worked with several astronauts. But sadly, Vincent hasn't had a chance to go to space himself yet. Yet, I say. I am so thrilled to bring him on.
Good morning.
Hooray.
Good morning, Stephen.
Is that a good enough build-up?
That's great. I'll try to live up to it, and I'll keep my my feet firmly planted on the ground.
You live up to everything you do, man, I'm sure, including being a wonderful and incredible father to your new baby. Congratulations on that, Vince.
Thank you very much.
I know how much fatherhood means to you, and bless you and your family. So, first question: how are you doing? How are you holding up with all of this?
I think about as well as anyone else, right? We're all finding a way to navigate through this multitude levels of craziness in this country right now, and I think every creative has been, affected in some way, positive or negative. Probably less positive than we'd like, especially in terms of work and finances. I mean, even if I wanted to go out and shoot for myself right now, it's not the best situation. I have this little Komodo here from Red that I love, and Jared will ask me, "Hey, you shoot anything?" I'm like, "Well, yeah, with my kids, and my family at home, but I'm not going out and doing an essay, on the subways of LA or anything like that right now." So that's kind of a reality, is that I think we're being affected on many levels, not just work being suspended for most of us, especially in production, but also being able to scratch that itch of going out and to photograph people or film people. And I really miss that. I realized that yesterday. I was walking up the beach, back from the beach with my baby, and looking at these people playing volleyball, and I was studying them, and I'm like, you kind of have, you're getting into the creepster vibe because you're staring at them, and they're like, why are you staring at them? I'm like, well, because I haven't seen that many people in a long time, and I think my brain is just curious, and that visual brain of just studying things that every photographer does was on, at a high level.
Right, right. It's true. You mentioned two things: scratching that itch of creating things that we all have all the time. It's part of us. It's part of our DNA.
Mm-hmm.
And then also, of course, protecting your beautiful new family and making sure that they're safe. Even going to the beach, making sure there aren't too many people on a certain day, right?
Right.
All those types of things. I mean, number one is I've spoke to Peter Da Silva about this. I've spoken to other people about this. We all want to do things. Even myself, I went to the city the other day, but you've got to be careful. You've got to be careful. So I have a 13-year-old, we have a 13-year-old, so it's important. But anyway, Vincent, it's an honor to have you on here. It got a little dark there for a minute.
No, okay. I'm messing with the screens.
No, it's okay. There you go. So we want to see you. So the thing is that, we worked together for at least 7 or 8 years at the times, back during the war and afterwards. And I have to tell you, it's a dream now to have my own show to help photographers and to bring you on. So let's get right to it with everything. But first of all, let me get to the first part here. I have so much that we're going to talk about, and we have all your stuff ready to put at the bottom to make sure everybody knows all about you. But Vincent, what's your favorite thing in life to work on as a photographer, and what's the one subject that you're most passionate about? I think I know the answer to this.
There's an easy answer, and then there's a more thought out answer, which is maybe not thought out, but more relevant answer. The easy answer for me is aerials. I love being up in the air in a helicopter or plane, filming or photographing. I just did my first pandemic job 2 weeks ago, which was a series of aerials for a company, and it felt really, 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 really good to be up there. We were up over Ojai and Ventura County, just north of LA, with the wispy clouds coming into the marine layer at sunset and flying through them with a phenomenal pilot named Aaron Fitzgerald, who's also an incredible visual pilot. He's actually the Red Bull helicopter as well. So he's the guy who flies it upside down or does the loops. And he's also one of the sweetest guys in the business, and he's got a great eye. So here we are flying in and out of the clouds with the sun setting, and I'm going, God, do I miss this so, so much. And I'm getting goosebumps just talking about it. So maybe it's just that it's at 7:08 in the morning on a Saturday in LA, and it's chilly. But the harder or the more complex answer is because it's a very visceral one, is the answer to that is something I haven't seen or photographed before. If there's a driving factor in my career is, for whatever reason, and I think it has to do with my father and my upbringing.
Okay.
I like to break things, whether they're rules. I like to tell students sometimes, master every single rule,
right,
and then break every single one of them. That's when you're going to start producing interesting work.
That's right. That's right.
Sometimes it's going to happen because you're inspired. A lot of times it's going to be a mistake, because you're bored or tired. If you're at the Olympics shooting 18-hour days for 14 days straight, you're going to do silly stuff. And guess what? You're going to get amazing imagery out of it.
Yeah.
If you're like me, bored in a helicopter, and you take a tilt shift lens out and you see that the world looks like a miniature for the first time, again, out of boredom, literally saying, I've shot this with a 24 100 times. What does it look like with a 24 tilt shift? So the hopefully not too long-winded answer to you is
no.
And your viewers is that the key is, to me, a strange refusal of doing the same stuff the same way. And the discipline of taking a great photograph is less about taking the great photograph and more about not taking the mediocre ones or the ones you've seen before. So you'll walk around in a scene as a photographer and you'll see, that's beautiful, but I've seen that. Right. That's beautiful, but I've shot that before. Right. That's really interesting, but I've seen that. And then it almost catches you in a very, again, goosebumps, but that is the reaction you should be having. I am literally having goosebumps talking about it, because that is almost what I've trained my brain to react to. Unless I feel something like that goes, ooh, there's something there that I either tells the story perfectly or does something to me visually or emotionally or intellectually that I can't ignore. And then that's where I'm going to dive into. But the key is, to get to that point, you have to say no a lot of times along that journey to other photographs, because you'll get lost in the other ones. It's like a sunsetting. If you see something on the first layer in your first 5 minutes, sometimes that's going to be your best photograph. You can walk around for the next 45 minutes and miss the sunset and never get anything better. But sometimes going through the exercise over and over again a few times to say, how can I make this more interesting? Or there's something I haven't discovered yet.
Right.
And that's the great picture hunt, as David LaBelle once wrote, a great photojournalism book.
Yes, absolutely. Mention the name again because you broke up for a second.
David LaBelle.
Yeah, no, everybody. I know who it is, but I wanted to make sure everybody else.
Kentucky, yeah.
So, it's true because, Vincent, Carla Baranakis, who used to be at the New York Times, actually former colleague of ours, just had a great comment. And she said, "Hi, Vince, I worked with you back in the day at the Times. You really have moved up in the world, very literally." But we're all pun masters with all
right.
So you get ready for them, buddy. So the thing is that I always tell people, students, people I lecture, my students at FIT, whatever it is, always experiment. And more than anything, when you look at something a million times, look at it again sometimes at a different time of the day, in a different way, at a different angle, this and that. You never know what you're going to come up with. So experiment, and always fuel your passion with trying new things, right?
I've got a good anecdote for you. So when I was, I would say 22 years old or so.
Right.
Maybe 23 at this point.
Right.
I left Chicago. I was on my first job at a place called All Sport, which is now Getty Images. And it's fair to say that at that time, that was the best group of sports photographers in the world. And I was not one of them. I was just being admitted to that group. But I got to work with the best tennis photographer in the world, with the best track and field, with the best car. You know what I'm saying? Like the person who invented that medium was at All Sport at the time, right? And the lesson that really hit me beyond seeing a lot of Sports Illustrated photographers that were in their 60s and 70s and had every accolade in the world, one lesson I learned that was killer was that they worked harder than anyone else, even at the highest level of their career. So the guys that when Sports Illustrated covers meant a lot, those were really big deals, and the guys that shot them every week, those gentlemen, whether it was Al Tiemans, whether it was John Beaver, you name it, they, especially someone like John Beaver, who didn't need to prove anything out. He was from a great lineage of photographers who shot the Green Bay Packers. His father, his brother, and himself. He photographed all the best.
Incredible.
He still got there before anyone, and he still left last, like John McDonough. And the second lesson, perhaps the key one, is I covered my first car race with a team of 3 or 4 photographers from All Sport. And I went with the veteran photographers. And what we did the day before the race is we walked the entire race for hours and studied the light. And what I realized is they were planning their entire day, not just based on news that would happen, which you can't predict, but on the best light. So that's why people never understood. They would see these incredible images from All Sport of these car, either crashes or whatever. But they weren't just the best timing and position of anyone else. They were also shot on chrome and full frame and perfect black, out of focus. Right. Literally the definition of art, because it was pushed to a level you'd never seen before. But it was also in the best light you've ever seen, which is what elevated that moment. Because, whether it's a home run or, slided home plate or a car crash, those are what photographers will get because they know where that's going to happen more than likely, et cetera. Right. To differentiate that image is that they're going to get the best image of anyone that day, but also in the best light you've ever seen. Yeah. And the key is that happened all the way back 1 or 2 days or years ago when they took that time to walk that track. Right. It's actually very similar to what a director does, but it's a whole different discussion. It's, you see Scorsese sitting there and you're like, I can do that. I can sit at a chair and watch a monitor. I can be a director. And it's like, no. Scorsese did all of his work the past few months or years and has communicated that to his crew. And by now he's just sitting back and letting them do their job. Right.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much prep, to do and everything else that's how like you said, they know they're going to get the home plate shot. They know they're going to get this shot. They know they're going to get the other shot when the flag is, waving and everything else at a car race we're speaking about. But the thing is that all those other things, all those other factors are key from studying the scene and knowing everything around you,
Yeah,
like the back of your hand,
Do you have the Sammy Sosa image or no?
I do have this sound. I'm going to bring that up. By the way, sit up a little because your light is changing a little and you're a little dark.
That's me messing with the monitors. I had an idea of Sammy Sosa, but I figured
Okay. I just want you to be bright, a little brighter so everybody can see you. You look good. I want to make
to be behind the camera. It's totally fine.
No, listen, by the way, folks, Stephen Kaplan here with the Spin It Social Hour. Vincent Laforet, Pulitzer Prize winning Vincent Laforet is here today as our honored guest. I wanted to let you know he woke up super early, like Peter De Silva did that day, and Nick Curry at 6:30 in the morning, to basically get ready and be on this show with us. So, he's got a baby and everything else. So he's here with us, and we appreciate it so much. So, I'm going to pull up some stuff while we're going to continue talking here about everything else. So hold on one second, and we're going to...
I want to say hello to Scott Balcom and Mitch.
Well, actually, one of the things I'm going to do real quick before we go to that is I'm going to show something really quick here. Hold on one second. And this is a real treat. I have it queued up just perfectly. I'm going to mute myself for 1 second. And
I don't know what drives this desire inside of me to make something ordinary look extraordinary. I've just always tried to make images that are different. Passion is this weird thing that you feel in your gut, and every time I've not followed it, I've regretted it for the rest of my life. When I was 26, I was on vacation in France with my father. He got a call, and we heard about the first plane hitting. I ended up getting stuck there because, you couldn't fly back to the States for days. I got a call at 3 o'clock in the morning and said, "Hey, do you want to go to Pakistan?" I'm a sports photographer. I have no idea about covering conflicts. There were some pretty bad episodes. Got pretty close to getting killed a few times. And after 3 months, I got out of there. Being overseas and covering the aftermath of 9/11, you see the best in humanity and you see the worst in humanity. You see both extremes. After 25 years, you kind of shot a lot of almost everything. It's really hard to find something different. I mean, I think that's the goal of anyone these days, is finding something that's never been done. That's what aerial photography was for me.
You got to unmute yourself, but
I wanted to show that happens. I wanted to show that because I thought that little snippet. I went through not hundreds, but dozens of things of yours, and I wanted to find that one little snippet that really told a great story in that 1 minute. So I think that was it, because I know what you went through to transition. I was there when you came back from the USS Abraham Lincoln. I posted a photo this week, an old photo of us when you came back. And you did amazing work over there, but it was dangerous too. And that's really wasn't your thing at the time, right, Vince?
My God, talk about, a fish out of water. Hello, Pete De Silva. It's nice to see you here this morning. Great guy to hang out with when I was
he's amazing.
And a great person in general and photographer. But it was I was a sports photographer. And funny thing is, before I went to sports, at Northwestern, I knew nothing about football. I didn't know what a first down was, literally. So I became, trial by fire a sports photographer because the Northwestern football team, which was the worst team in the Midwest and in the country for like 60 years, went for the Rose Bowl the second year I was there. And there suddenly here I was shooting Michael Jordan a few months later, during his last 5 championships. So dumb luck, but that's how I became a sports photographer effectively. Okay. Because, I was able to focus an 85-1.4 or 400-2.8 without autofocus effectively. And I was a technical guy. And then with the war, I was at that point doing general assignment for the New York Times, so everything, but not conflicts. When bullets fly, I hit the ground and I stay down. That's not my thing, because mostly, bullets don't really care what your ideology is, or if you're a good person or not. They just hit randomly. But it's important work. But I was a fish out of water. Next thing you know, I'm covering conflicts for 3 months straight out there, and it was very psychologically difficult because of what happened in New York, and not being able to go home, let alone see your family and friends,
right?
Your city. For me, I was already effectively had a relationship with the city, if you will, as a photographer for the New York Times. My beat was literally to photograph the city and find front page images. So you get a certain kind of connection that's odd, because it feels like it's your job to document New York City, right? And it was tough. It was one of the hardest things I had to do until Katrina, basically.
Yeah, no, I'm going to bring up, hold on one second here.
Young Vince.
Yeah, I'm going to say, you've done it all, Vince, and you've also, hold on a second, let me put that away. One of the things that, you've grown so much, and you've done, I love the evolution of Vincent Laforet. I mean, I really do. It's an incredible story. And that's the best part of all, is having you on here to tell your story, because it started with these young passions, as I know, you being on the Intrepid here of all places in New York with the choppers.
Yeah.
And then also tell the story about how you knew photography was for you, Vince.
Well, this is a photograph, this beautiful photograph on a nice, 8 by something, I guess 11 or 12 print, is my father's photograph of me. He was a photographer as well, or is a photographer as well. He was a photojournalist who worked at Gamma and covered conflicts, but same like me, wasn't his thing, but he ended up photographing films as a set photographer for Premiere Magazine. He was actually the director of photography there eventually. And it's funny to see this image, because this is me as a very young man, I think 12, probably maybe 13, on the Intrepid. And I, as you mentioned, kind of came full circle to flying these things and literally living on an aircraft carrier for a month for the New York Times, right? I went through training with the SAS guys and for journalists, and they kidnap you, they mock shoot you, they teach you all the different things about how to survive a gunshot wound, and terrorists and kidnappings, yada yada. And then we put on our MOP suits, the anti-chemical warfare suits. Like, this is a nightmare, but I still survived that. But then they mock kidnapped us, and they try to pull off a wedding ring that I had just gotten. And that's when I woke up and said, do I want to do that? Because the guy was with his wet boot pulling my wedding ring off very violently, in a weird field out of, north of London, with having mock executed all of my fellow students, on our knees. And I'm like, so I was offered to go with the 1st Marine Cavs into Iraq for the Second Gulf War. And I was offered also alternatively to go to the USS Abraham Lincoln. And I was like, Top Gun all the way, and air conditioning and all the things, and flying, having F-18s and F-14s taken off inches from my head.
Right.
Phenomenal experience. And the reason I became a photographer was that my dad is one. And at 15, I said, so I had done a lot of different arts by then, a lot of music, a lot of, 2D arts, like, drawing, painting, oil painting, you name it.
Right. They
were all too slow. And I said, well, I hadn't found, even acrylic was too slow after doing oil and watercolor. And I was just bored. And I said to my dad, it's silly that you're a professional photographer and that I don't know how to do it. Can you teach me? And he handed me the camera, and that was it. At 15, I instantly fell in love with it.
Yeah, no, I mean, it was your calling, man. There's no doubt about it. But what's trippy about all of this, like I said, I had to show that first photo of you, is because who would have thought? I mean, here's this kid standing on the Intrepid, then he develops a love for photography, and years later he's, on the deck of the, the
Intrepid.
No, in the Gulf War.
The Abraham Lincoln. Yeah.
Abraham Lincoln. I was going to say the Eisenhower, the Abraham Lincoln, and then developing into Air Laforet, flying choppers, which we're going to tell that story, because wow, the heights that you achieve and going up. I mean, wow. Anyway, this image here, Vincent, from Pakistan, I believe, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
found this, and I so wanted to show this because I remember when your work was coming into the wire, my jaw dropped when I saw this photo because it was stunning. I mean, tell a little story about this photo, because the colors, the mood, the feel to it. I mean, we're going to take Edward's question now for 1 second, just because it's so big. We just want to talk about this one photo for 1 second. Hold on. Let's take that off the screen so we don't. Okay, there we go. So tell us, Vincent, tell us about this photo.
This was, so again, this is the first weeks of the 9/11 wars, in Afghanistan and Pakistan. Right. And oddly, we found the story of the phenomenal reporter who I'm now completely blanking on, which is impossible. Frank, it'll come back, but
it happens.
Old age. He was the managing editor of the LA Times eventually. It'll come back. But he found the story about this gentleman here who would bury Qurans, which are never supposed to be defaced, after they're not supposed to be thrown out. And they would donate them from around the world. And he would bury them in tunnels in Pakistan, like miles of hand-dug tunnels. And the last thing you expect to find in a hand-dug tunnel in Pakistan, near Quetta, is power, let alone a fluorescent pink, light tube, right? Which is, it wasn't that common in the day. Like today, every music video is shot like this, right? But back in the day, it's just kind of this really random thing. And you mentioned technical stuff. I was always kind of a geek and a pioneer with like tech stuff. And that's a strobe put remotely in the back of the room to give you that other spot of light in the second dimension or third dimension of that photograph. And it was just a story about a guy who was burying tens of thousands of Qurans in the mountains so they wouldn't be defaced.
I remember writing the caption for that photo for the wire. I remember seeing it. That's the power of a photo like that, when it stays with you all these years. And out of all the photos I've seen of yours, this one came right back to me in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
It's just stunning. It's stunning. It's something out of a movie. I mean, what an incredible experience. So the other thing that we wanted to talk about was right here. Well, we talked about that. Is what were you working on, Vincent, before COVID hit, and what are you working on now? And as you talk about that, I'm going to continue to show some other work right now as we go through some of this.
I could talk about that. I don't want to miss Edward's question, so I want to address.
You know what? Let's take some questions then.
The image you have up right now.
Thank you for reminding me about that. I'm so sorry, Edward. I always show all your questions.
It's a well thought through question, and I think if I have one word of advice, for anyone, if I dare give any advice,
yes.
And it applies to life and photography, it's the single hardest thing in life or photography to find is balance. And balance is not something you find; it's something you choose.
Right.
I think that goes right into photography, where he mentions pre-visualization,
right,
and how important that is. And I absolutely agree with him. And what I like to say to people, or whether it's students or people I work with, is as a director, you have to prepare to be spontaneous. And what I mean by that is, because it's supposed to be self-canceling, is you have to really pre-visualize, you have to think things through, you have to do a lot of prep work, as we discussed, where you really go through the process as much as you can before your shoot day and think of everything, or you practice it, or you go on location and you really think about all the angles. And then once you're really prepared with a shot list and what you're doing, and you know what you're doing and know exactly what you're looking for, you have to keep an open eye for something that surprises you, that gives you that tingly feeling. That says, hey, what you were doing it was great, but look on your left or behind you, that's amazing. Or point your camera in a different direction, or choose a different lens, or whatever it is. And you have to find the balance between pre-visualization. You have to have that. But once you have that, because you have a plan, it frees you up to freelance, if you will,
right,
or free solo, or however you want to put it, and just go out, in a dangerous place, because you always can fall back onto your plan.
Right. Right. No, absolutely. And it's fun. It's. I remember also you saying that when you were in the war and you were documenting all of this, I had Paula Bronstein on about a month ago, and I remember you tweeting out something saying that Paula saved my butt a couple of times.
She literally saved my life once.
Wow.
So it's a whole long story, but we found ourselves in a place where we weren't supposed to be, and the police and military didn't like us being there. And next thing we're fighting for AK-47s, like this. And she showed up with another photographer and started flashing their strobes on their camera, literally like in the movies, just to get their attention, and they stopped because it was heading in a very, very bad place and not going well.
Wow. Hey, let's have a couple of those comments back that came up. One was from Estras Suarez, another Pulitzer Prize winning photographer who's here watching this morning. Estras says, all of the greats have always said, have a plan, but be ready to dismiss it all of a better set of circumstances as a better set of circumstances present themselves. Absolutely.
They will if you prepare, and that's, to a young photographer or a new photographer that's listening, or watching, I would always go to every situation because I did news, right? You didn't know what the event was going to be. My job was to anticipate that. Sometimes it wasn't that, but the goal was get that safety image early. Get that one image that if the event ends right now or you have to leave or anything happens, get that safety image in the can, in the box. And then now you have that to fall back on. Now you start experimenting. So in every job to this day, when I start off, I'm holding my breath to this day, because if I'm not pushing the envelope hard enough. Right. If I'm sitting back and relaxed, even if I prepare it to death, that means I'm not pushing hard enough. That allows me to push further. And I'm going to get that safety first shot in the tank or in motion, a series of shots to make a sequence. And then I'm going to push my crew or myself to a really dangerous, uncomfortable place, not physically, but pushing the envelope of like, this shouldn't work, but if it did, it would be really, really, really neat.
That's right. That's right. Well, the stories are only starting, so we're going to get to more. Folks, just want to let you know, as we always do at certain segments of the show, this is Stefan Kaplan. This is Vincent Laforet. And we're here to let Vincent talk about his work and tell his stories. Incredible body of work. And I'd just like to ask everybody, please, if you're watching this broadcast, please share it, hit the share button. The best way to amplify these photographers' stories and work is by sharing it with your friends and network. So you're watching the Spin It Social Hour, and let's get their names and work out there, everybody, okay? Because they've been hit tremendously hard by everything, the way many segments of society have, and we want to help them out, and we want to make sure they're known about more and more and more. So, Vincent, my God, the photos just go on and on here. This is another work of art here with the burqas and the flow of the wind in the desert there while they're walking towards the van to probably, that's a United Nations refugee camp, I presume.
Yeah, it's on the border between Quetta and Kandahar.
Right.
I think this image to me speaks to what war is, and the part of it that interests me. I never really covered the shooting and bombing aspect directly.
Right.
I like to cover what the military calls collateral damage, which is actually the large share of the victims are never on a battlefield. These are families that were uprooted from Afghanistan, and they risked their lives to get out, because if they were caught, they would be executed.
Right.
And this is their new home, quote unquote. It is a large swath of desert with nothing but UNHCR tents. And here's a mother with her child. And, some people might see a burqa and, especially at that time when there were lots of emotions, see that as something very foreign and mysterious or threatening. Right. And I think the photographer's role is to remind people that these are families just like us, that these are children and babies just like us with the exact same fears. And, that truck back there is their life belongings, if they brought anything. And this is their new life. That's it. That land right there that is literally, on the other side of Kandahar, across the Pakistan border. That's it. And that to me is the compelling part about what we do as photojournalists, is to remind people that, while at the time there were some very peaked emotions in the U.S. to say, kill this, kill that, and in Pakistan, Afghanistan, same thing,
Yeah.
kill Americans, kill Bush, that, it wasn't about that. And that the best comment I got one of the best comments of my entire career at the New York Times was from a series of slideshows I did in, Pakistan over that first month, from a lot of people saying, thank you for showing us that these people aren't all terrorists. Really? And when someone said that, or it was, I remember a Korean or Vietnam War veteran, I think he was, said, thank you for showing us the humanity of war. And that to me as a relatively young photographer meant more than anything, because it wasn't about my photographs. It wasn't about me at all. Yep. My job as a New York Times photographer was to simply point the camera and say, this is what's happening here. Let's not lose sight of the bigger picture. And here we are, several years later, I guess this is only 2 years later, on an aircraft carrier in the Gulf. This was that story you mentioned about the Intrepid being embedded on there.
Right. Well, I have to say, Ruth Fremson, who was part of the team with you guys when war was going on. Ruth, when we all gathered a while after everything, and the Pulitzers were handed out and many other things, we were in the executive dining room at the top at the old building. And Ruth said exactly what you said about she thanked me personally and my colleagues for working so hard in the wire to make sure everything gets out everywhere so that people understand the stories of that these are human beings. These are people with families. This is their life right there in a truck, like you said, in the middle of the desert. And they're fleeing persecution and many other things. And, we have you guys to thank, risking your lives for telling these stories to hopefully end up making a difference in the world that way,
I mean, Ruth was one of those very special people who was a phenomenal photographer, but a human being first. I mean, I remember just from her being around her as a person, there was this round of just awareness. And, we can complicate being a journalist as much as we want. At the end of the day, you have to go to the location and point a camera or ask a question and just report back. That's what we're supposed to do, as a profession, is just show you and get through the molasses and disinformation and show you what's actually going on as best we can.
Well, you guys, I mean, it's a term that's used way too much, but I'm going to say it anyway. You guys that were over there in Iraq, Afghanistan, and Pakistan were the A-team, man. I tell you, the photos that came out of there and the stories that you guys captured helped the world see things differently. And I always say we have all of you guys to thank for educating us constantly and putting these visuals and embedding them in our heads, in our memories.
And we've evolved. I mean, now looking back at it, it wasn't just the people in the field. It was, Arthur Salzberger and the family, and the editors like you and Bill Keller or Hollow Rains, whoever it was at that time, who were sending us to these places, giving us space in the paper. I lived arguably in the heyday of the photography of the New York Times, where when I started in 1999, it was not known as a photo paper. It had some great photos, but mostly, one picture and a postage stamp inside. And Michelle McNally came in, and we would have, I remember vividly during the Pakistan 9/11 war that, we would be like, it's a 5-column picture, it's a 7-column picture inside, and there's 2 or 3 of them. I'm like, what? And it was literally this rebirth of photography at the New York Times, where Ruth Fremson, Tyler Hicks, Chang Lee, a lot of phenomenal photographers were not only continuing to produce the great work they had before, but the paper was displaying it and championing it. And this image here to this day, stops me in my tracks, because this was actually the image I think they used for the Pulitzer entry as like the main image.
I think you're right. I think that's why I pulled it. Yeah.
And I really wonder where this young woman is, because the story behind this was I was actually being encircled by kids, like in the movies where all the kids jump up and down and want to have their pictures taken. So that's probably the first white male they'd ever seen in flight.
Right.
I had a camera and the things, and they were jumping up and down like crazy. And then suddenly everything, I was literally surrounded, like an NBA star.
Right.
And everything just stopped at one point when I looked to my left and I saw this young girl just standing like this, leaning against this dirt wall, which was her new home. And you can see the shadows of the people, and a lot of people had died, or been, men were executed in front of their families, and only the mother and the child might be let through if they got caught leaving, by the Taliban. And it was an eerie image where you could see the shadows of the people and everything stopping from it. The child looks like a man and a woman and other people, and this young girl, the intensity in her eye, where just the world stopped for a minute.
I mean, the way you captured it with that sunlight, with the shadows and everything, I mean, it's just a perfectly composed photo. But the thing that, of course, makes it stand out so much is her in the foreground with that look on her face of you just want to, just bow your head and say, oh, I hope she's, survived everything back then. But, it goes back to that incredible story of Steve McCurry.
I thought you were going to go to McCurry, of course. Yeah.
Going back years later and finding the Afghan girl with the green eyes,
Yeah.
And everything. You wonder the same thing about this girl and thousands of others, right, Vince?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but capturing that child in the background there too, the other reflection of the people in the background there. Wow, what an incredible photo. But once again, you guys, and then there's the other end of this, being on the ship and aircraft carrier and documenting things like this. Vince, you have to talk about this for a second. What was it like being on a ship with the intensity of jets taking off with the streams of light and fuel and power? Talk about this for a minute.
I almost physically got burned taking this image. This was the first night I saw a post by John Schultz here.
Oh, yeah. Let's show that. Is there a question or a comment from John?
He just remembers the night flight ops from the flight deck.
Nice listening to your thoughts. Good to see your photos from the Abraham Lincoln. Certainly remember the night flight ops from the flight deck. John, thank you so much. Bonjour. Merci. He's here. He's living in Paris. It's wonderful to see him and hear from him. So anyway, talk about this, Vincent.
So this is when all the planes lined up on the deck to go start the war. And I was holding a tripod, and there was a traffic jam effectively on the deck because every plane is going out fully loaded. And it was turning and angling for the catapult, and it got stuck and stopped. And the afterburners that weren't on, obviously, but the jets, the jet engines were still emanating or emitting quite a bit of heat. And I remember holding on to this tripod and saying, I may have to let go because my arm's burning off. We had safety gear on top of it, right? We wore these same kind of, I'm not sure what material they are, cotton or so very, probably not cotton, but something inflammable. And, this is a long exposure of an F-18 taken off. Wow. That's the afterburner through the steam that comes off the catapult. Yeah. And a long exposure, and it's an eerie image. It's pretty. I have one criticism of my Abraham Lincoln work, which I think it's too pretty. If I look back at the first image you showed, I think Esdras mentioned the composition and everything. I agree. It's a beautiful image compositionally. It almost looks like a film still that someone would have done on Apocalypse Now or something. But when I look back at it, I think you're so removed from reality, and maybe it speaks to that, that when the safest place on Earth to be is on the deck of a nuclear aircraft carrier in the U.S. Navy, because it is surrounded by a little armada of ships, submarines, and planes. You're about as impervious as you can be to anything. Right. And when you're on there, it's surreal because the planes are taken off every day, whether it's war or not. Right. They're training every day. They were enforcing the no-fly zone. So an image like this is like the one day a month that they got off, because these sailors and pilots work every single day, 7 days a week, sometimes, if not often, or all the time. And this is the one day. And these images to me are very dangerous because they have to be associated with captions, right? Sure. This is not the typical life on an aircraft carrier.
No, and that's why
that war that they got this time off. But just I'm mentioning the beauty of these images and how they're very, maybe it is appropriate, like that these images here are real that you're showing, but the aircraft carrier images were very graphic and almost commercial, but they were news. And it was a stage in my work because I think there was no depth to it. You know, there was definitely depth of the people and sailors. Like, it definitely had a great story
Right.
of what went on under the ship.
Right.
But the weirdest part about being on an aircraft carrier during a war is that the planes take off all the time.
Right.
You go down and you hang around with the sailors and you see explosions on CNN or Fox News
Right.
on a TV. And then 45 minutes after those explosions, or an hour and a half, the planes land.
Right.
And most of the sailors aren't thinking about the fact that the planes that took off with those bombs are causing those explosions over there, because they're into their automated every day, got to do my job, you know, and you don't feel the effects of war there at all. You're completely isolated. You don't see what happens.
Right.
The pilots, you know, may see the explosion, but they don't see the aftermath. And it's a very strange way to experience a war.
Yeah, it must have been. It must have been. But then, you know, then time went on. And as I tell the story and you tell the story, and then, you know, years later, we end up with a major disaster of epic proportions in New Orleans and Louisiana coast. And you were there to document that. I mean, this photo, wow. I mean, this photo literally shows the force of that storm and what transpired. I mean, you must have been like, you must have thought you were in another world when you happened upon this.
This reminded me of the Close Encounters image from Spielberg,
right?
The ships in the middle of the desert. And this experience pretty much ended my photojournalism career. It wasn't, it wasn't 9/11. It wasn't the Gulf War. It wasn't X, Y, or Z. But Katrina did me in,
and that's why I put these in here, because I know that, and I brought these in for you to tell that bit of the story, because I know that you segued, you moved out of photojournalism because of what you saw in Katrina, and you know, here's another, you know, photo here. You know, you saw the pain, the I mean, this is happening in this country, you know. And it didn't have to happen if many things had been taken care of, as we know, with the levees and many other things and the response time and everything. But, you know, look, I mean, right here, this photo must have been one of the ones that probably said, you know what, and between all the horror you saw there, I need to switch, right?
Yeah. So, you know, I have two things to share. One, this photo here, I negotiated my way onto a sheriff's helicopter that was there on behalf of FEMA.
Okay.
And I think, I mean, I don't know historically if it's accurate or not, but it's going to be pretty close. The first person to get images out of Katrina, you know, because we had gone down with FEMA, and because they had like a portable Verizon cell tower, there was absolutely no video coming out for days from Katrina. People forget that. It was all, in this case, my still images, and then eventually some AP and the paper there transmitting images. And at the time, I negotiated my way onto the helicopter, saying, you know, let me show people what's going on. Then I pooled this image, you know, anyone could use it.
Right.
And I remember asking the pilot was flying very fast. We had very limited fuel. And I said, can you stop for 30 seconds?
Wow.
So I can get this image. And they did. And the memory I have from this flight was not only how violently he was flying, but how when we stopped and we actually took for a second everyone in there, including the not Brown, the main FEMA guy, but the local FEMA guy, was ashen faced, and we all knew the scale of which this hit was unprecedented.
Right.
The second point I wanted to make was that we all, as journalists and photojournalists, have this safety mechanism built in where we say it's our version of not in my backyard and NIMBY. It's, you know, this doesn't happen at home. So when you go and you cover a conflict or a horrible event, you're always saying to yourself, well, that's over there. You know, I live over here. And that's how your brain compartmentalizes what you're seeing, because you see the best and the worst of humanity in this job. You know, you see some incredibly brave, generous, amazing, you know, genius people and everyday people, and you see the absolute worst of what humanity can do as well. But you compartmentalize. Now, Katrina happened on our soil. And the last anecdote I'll share with you is of Tyler Hicks, who is a veteran war photographer, won several Pulitzer Prizes.
Amazing
photographer.
Yep.
I actually met him when on his first day at the Times as a staff photographer, and handed him the key to his locker and his car and stuff like that. And I called him and I said, you know, hey, how you doing? And he's like, oh, I'm fine. I'm like, what are you doing? He's like, I'm going to get some water. I'm like, gonna get some water? And he's like, yeah, I've got my little, you know, shopping cart from the grocery store. I have some few buckets, and I'm gonna go to the pools next door and get some water. I've run out of water. I'm like, I've been flying a helicopter for a week, and every single pool in New Orleans is green.
Huh.
And I quickly started to understand he wasn't doing well. He had some sort of a very mental breakdown is a very strange thing to say. It's not what it was, but some sort of something unclicked.
Right.
And I said, you know what, Tyler? Meet me at this, you know, Shop Mart big, you know, parking lot in 3 hours, and I'll meet you. And I landed in the helicopter with some water and food, and just kind of got him back on his feet. But that to me was more shocking than whatever I was going through, because, you know, I'm not a war conflict photographer.
Right.
He is. And to see him have that little bit of a click was like, this is affecting all of us. And every journalist that was, veteran journalist that was covering us, said this is one of the hardest things I had to cover because, you know, of what we saw.
Yeah, no, I mean, I know Tyler. I remember talking to him many times. God, I have stories that I won't even get into right here when he was in Iraq, and you know, he had to make his way out of certain places. I mean, the guy had 9 lives, you know. Amazing guy, but it takes its toll. A lot of this stuff takes its toll on a lot of people. Could we have that question back, or that statement from Sudha Parekh? I just wanted to read about her experience when she actually went down there. I have seen many images, so many images during Katrina. It was pathetic. I went there through the Red Cross to volunteer as a psychotherapist. I have a lot of memories. Ms. Parekh, you are one of the big fans of this show and supporters of this show. I thank you. And I also thank you for sharing that and your service by always trying to help society at large. Thank you very much, Ms. Parekh, for saying that. Rose says, Tyler Hicks, incredible work. I think he's from Connecticut, Westport.
He is.
Yeah. Good, Rose. Wow, go Rose. Okay, Rose knows. Rose is a colleague of mine. She knows all about Tyler. Yeah, you guys, I tell you, you know, like I said, the A-team may be the weird term to use, but you guys were the A-team, man. I tell you, amazing work. But so, you know, let's move on to a few things here, Vince. Let me get to something else here. So let's ask this, since we have this photo up, it's kind of appropriate. To this day, what was the most dangerous or scariest shoot for you after the war? Of course, we're not talking about every day was scary being in a war and conflict, but like things like this, to this day, what was the most dangerous, scariest shoot for you?
Well, the funny part is once you've had an AK-47, and this sounds terrible, I don't even want to say it.
No,
you know,
I know.
Like a war photographer, once you've had a gun held to your head, you know, and you survive that, everything else is kind of relative. So I don't know that I ever had a feeling of danger outside of conflicts. It's
okay. You know, that's the answer right there, man.
That was the dangerous spot, you know, and the dangerous experiences I and others had. Right. And people who could do that every day have every day in conflicts, you know. I went from that to stuff more like this, where I love the world. I love the beauty in our world. And I think there's plenty of negativity and death and destruction out there. Well, and I try to highlight the beauty, you know, following that career. And I left. That's why I left photojournalism. Was I you know, it's like the Red Cross patch, or, you know, the sticker on your door. Like, I gave is the way I felt. It had an effect on me. You know, Sudha knows when she says that she has a lot of memories. You don't forget that stuff.
No, you don't. No, you don't. I still remember, you know, I can't imagine what you guys, you know, I always say coming in 9/11, I got into work that day. I took a raft to work that day. I don't know if you ever heard the story. I came across the Hudson River because I couldn't get in any other way. Everything was shut down. I jumped in a Zodiac raft by some guy and I zipped across. But anyway, I got to the office and we worked, I mean, hours and days and months nonstop. It starts to take its toll looking at, I mean, the amount of graphic images that we were looking at.
Oh, yeah. So, you know, let's take that opportunity to jump on the more positive stuff.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. Anyway, so getting to this now, my point is I want to thank you for doing this type of work now, because it's such an incredible thing to see the beauty of the world through your eyes. And that's what I was getting to here. Sorry if I took the long way there.
No, that's fine. But it's almost like going for military service, right? You do your duty. It's the way photojournalism felt to me. It was an incredible career. Like, I wouldn't give it back, because there was so much more that was not conflict. So many amazing things I got to do at the New York Times. But at a certain point, you're like, I got to do something else. And that's where, this image, and if you want to keep going, other images are shot after from the air and other places. And, this is tilt shift.
Yeah, no, we're going to go through a bunch of these now. I mean, using your tilt shift, mechanisms and everything. I mean, it's just beautiful. Is this the Derby, the Kentucky Derby?
Derby, and that's a remote camera on a tilt shift 45mm lens.
Oh,
I got lucky, and I pre-focused on, just a few lengths from the finish line, and got the jockey, the winning jockey, his arm.
What a beauty, man. What a beautiful shot.
I went to after the news. This is finding, the more positive and beautiful stuff to balance things out.
I'm going to go back to the beginning here because I wanted to get to this stuff. So here we are, years later, you're just Air Laforet, man. I mean, that's it. You're going up in choppers. You're going up way, way high. Vincent, what's the highest you've gone? And tell us about the story about, I mean, you've reached certain heights that helicopter pilots don't even want to go up to, right?
Oh, we've been 14,000 feet or higher, right into the hypoxia zone, where the pilot's wearing oxygen. I've suffered from hypoxia once or twice, and it's very trippy because, as a photographer, you do a lot of mental calculation on math for, you go up from 1.4 to 2 to 2.8, so you go down from 160th to 130th to 150th. You do that math all the time,
right?
And the inverse proportionality stuff. And you do it like that, boom, boom, boom. You look at something, and you can say that that's 1/15th of a second at 28800, right?
Right.
And you know that when you have hypoxia, you literally feel like you're drunk. You're like, I don't know what I can't do the math. It's really fascinating because you're not drunk, you're not incapacitated. Well, you will become it because you're suffering a lack of oxygen to the brain. But that was 14,000 feet over Las Vegas. And I started to feel hypoxia pretty severely, and the pilot did too. And he said, "I feel a little wonky." I'm like, "Let's land right now."
Whoa. Well, yeah. When the pilots start saying that, then you want to go down.
And we hadn't thought about it, but obviously Las Vegas is 2,000 feet and 2,001 feet above sea level. So by the time we got to 12,000 feet above the city, we were at 14,000 feet, and it took a very long time to get there. So every flight from that point on, I insisted the pilots have oxygen.
Well, oh my God, I had to have you tell that story because it's mind-boggling to me. I mean, I love doing photos from planes when they're closed, but I'm looking at this, and this is the shot that everybody looks at in their mind and in their eyes, through their eyes, when they're coming into JFK or Newark. This shot right here is, I mean, how many times I've seen this from the windows, but here you are, and you're hanging outside of a helicopter.
Yeah, I'm on the side of the helicopter, the door open, with the harness on, and seeing this. And the most incredible part of this was that you can see literally 747s and A380s under your feet,
right?
Several thousand feet lower than you, landing at JFK, Newark, or LaGuardia. And you're here in a helicopter, and the pilots, like you said, are saying, some pilots refuse to go that high. They're not comfortable, up that high and in the darkness. And, that was what the Air project was for me, was pushing the technical boundaries. This here is our Air 1.0. The image I just had with a twirl, where it's coming up, is, what I'm doing now, which is adding movement into photography, which is kind of the next challenge for me of, the one thing I always heard growing up is you go in a photographer in a helicopter, you've got to shoot at 1/500th of a second or 1,000th of a second, like super fast shutter speeds, or your images are going to be blurry. Here we are now doing several second long exposures from the air, really pushing the technical boundaries. This is all shot in camera. There's no Photoshop.
Right.
And that is the type of stuff I really like to try to push.
Well, let me tell you, you are a technical whiz, and you are a master at this stuff, and you love to push the boundaries. This is Sydney, if I'm correct.
Yep.
And oh my God, I mean, the whole Air series, folks, you have to go to Vincent's website that we've been showing off all the time. You've got to go to his Vimeo account and see videos of his projects and his work. Check him out on all platforms, including Instagram. The one thing, how do we, okay, so we, sorry, I had this in that order here. And then, I wanted to get to right here. Wow. I mean, being up that high all the time with the lights and the chopper, what's the turbulence like and everything else up there, Vince?
It's usually very quiet.
Okay.
We obviously don't want to be in a salad shaker up there. And this story, I'm laughing because we did all this previs. We had actually mapped out all of Barcelona on Google Maps,
Okay.
Google Earth, and we had a pre-flight with the pilot explaining where we wanted to go, what patterns we were looking. We are actually virtually flying before most flights.
Okay.
And Google Earth, where you can actually see the angle of light in 3D cities now. So we're really prepping. And this guy went for the entire previs, and we went up in the air, and you can hear him from the back. He's going, wow, wow, wow. He and most pilots on this series had never been that high above those cities, ever. Because you don't go to 12,000 feet over Barcelona in a helicopter.
Right.
You know, if you're a pilot, you're looking this way or at your controls. You're not looking down in a regular jet. And the funny anecdote was that at one point, he kept saying okay to almost every single request. And at one point, my longtime assistant and friend, who was always with me in the helicopter, said, I don't know that he really understands what you're saying. I'm not sure he's really understanding. So I said, okay, why don't you go right? Okay. And we're going right. And I said, okay, now let's go left. Okay, and we're going right. And let's go up. Okay, and we're going right. And we quickly realized, okay, a la izquierda, a la derecha. He's like, oh, okay. We were like,
it was the language barrier.
And he was a good pilot, and he was figuring it out, but he was only understanding half of what we were saying. So I used my limited Spanish to make that work, and we just died laughing in the helicopter.
Oh my God, what a story! I tell you, if there's one place you don't want to have a language barrier is when you're thousands of feet up in the air with the doors open from a helicopter, and you're trying to get your point across about going left or going right or going up or going down.
Yeah.
Great story, Vince. Oh my God. So here we are. I wanted to show this because we could go about 10 15 minutes here, but the thing is that what I wanted to ask you was, here I dug these up because here's some early aerial work you did.
Okay.
I don't know how long ago, but it must have been probably a decade or more, right?
I think these are iPhone photos from Instagram that you dug up with a Fuji thing around them.
Wow.
My guess. The one on the right is definitely an iPhone photo.
Oh, okay. So I dug these up. My point with this is that, folks, wait until you get a load of this. So this is now the gear that Vincent's using right here. Mm-hmm. And we'll have him talk about it for a minute or so, a couple of minutes, to tell you about Red Cinema and the gear that he uses here for doing this high def work. Because I'm flabbergasted by the level of quality, the quality. Look at this. So here's the gear that Vincent's using now for a lot of shoots and a lot of work. And look at the images that come from this. I mean, crystal clear. Vincent, talk to us about this.
So I know at one point, I would say almost a decade ago now, it's actually been 12 years, I went from being a photographer into motion and being a director. And I've been using every, whether it's an Alexa camera or a Blackmagic camera, but very often a Red camera that actually shoots 8K video. Now, why do you care? Well, if you think about it, an 8K video file is actually a 30 megapixel stills, either 24 times a second or up to 72 times a second. So, the image you shot of the gentleman there or showed is a still image pulled from video.
Wow.
And you can actually, go and see the detail on his pupil, and you can read the numbers off of his measuring tape around his neck. He's a tailor in Iceland. And that's where, we're headed, been headed for a while now, for almost a decade, of this convergence, whether, it's not going to matter, I think, in the next 2 years, I would predict. It's already happening with a 12K Ursa camera, which is from Blackmagic, which is producing an 80 megapixel still. 24 times a second, full raw still. Obviously we're going to have the form factor being different. We're going to have the price point being different. But the question, I just shot with that little blue body you showed called the Komodo from Red yesterday. Right. Images of my daughter was video. But last night, well past midnight, I was going through still imagery captured off that camera and going, this looks just like a Leica image. And guess what? I'm shooting with the same lenses in front of it, whether it's a Leica M35 f2 or a 1.4
Right.
or a Sigma 1835, which is what I shot yesterday. Here's a 200-400 from Canon. And the reason it looks like it is it's shot with the same lenses and the sensor is phenomenal. And we're shooting, stills 24 frames, 24 times per second continually.
Wow.
And you're going to see the erosion. This is the first body that's under, the original red bodies were $40, $50, $25,000, the range.
Right.
This is going to be a $6,000 camera or $7,000.
Wow, $6,000, not bad for that, man.
No, you're shooting 6, and you can put every mount on it because they have this new Canon RF mount, so you can shoot, Canon glass, you can shoot Leica glass, you can shoot Hasselblad glass, you name it. You can PL glass, obviously, you put on this. And I just go out with this little blue body. I have 2 cameras. I have this red Komodo and I have a Leica monochrome.
Right.
And those are my 2 cameras I just take out all the time, and that's it. And so
look at the detail.
Still camera versus versus and yeah, this is the detail you'll get. That's an 8K frame grab. So this is being shot 72 frames per second in 8K.
All right, I'm going to say it straight. Badass, man.
Well, it goes back. That's Mother Nature doing all the work, and you're getting in position to capture.
Wow, hot stuff. I mean, just incredible, the detail. I mean, and one of your favorite places, I know one of mine is just flying in a regular plane. I can't imagine. God, would I love to do what you do one day and just experience just hanging from a helicopter that way. But is going over from the West Coast to the East Coast flight, because, you go over Utah, you go over Nevada, you go over all these incredible canyons, and especially if it's snowing and other things. I mean, wow, the detail. But look at this. I mean, just phenomenal. Incredible work. I mean, it just, but one of the things here, you work with a lot of people, and we want to give props to a lot of people and a lot of the companies from Red Cinema, right, Vince, and G-Tech, right?
Yep, absolutely.
I mean,
the thing that's been interesting over my career was that I went from being someone who just used the gear to working directly with the companies themselves, whether it's Canon or Apple, Adobe, Zeiss, Fujinon, Shotover,
right?
You name it. And I'm lucky enough to get a chance to either consult for them or work with them, and give them direct feedback and on alpha and beta stuff, because as you can imagine, a lot of this stuff is shot with very cutting edge technology. Not many people do it, so the feedback that I and others can give them is unique because we're pushing their gear to places they never intended to go.
Right. No, absolutely. I mean, you really are pushing the limits with everything, man. But, going back to the Air series here, I have to say this one, every time I look at it, takes my breath away, man. Mm-hmm. This new series that you're doing on motion is just absolutely, is stunning. And I wish you all the success in the world as you continue on with all of this, because it's just a phenomenal way to look at the world. And you've been featured on every major channel and outlet. And to have you on here today to talk about your work, to tell everybody your stories, and to share your time with us, I have to tell you, I'm absolutely, thrilled. Peter De Silva says, overexposed.
That's an inside thing. He made these wonderful little plates where we would mount remote camera, and he gave me an overexposed plate. And this feels like 15 years ago or so, maybe.
Yeah.
And it was just a plate that went on the ground, and you can screw in little cylindric, pieces of metal that had quarter-20s at the end of it, and you put your camera on it, on a ball head or whatever. And those plates, man, they covered the Olympics, they covered elections, they covered every remote, you see on the ground was at the time his plates that he made for that use.
Right.
So that's what that was. And that's, one of the reasons we got to meet.
No, absolutely. I mean, so there were so many comments. One of the things, we'll go back little by little. Vince is busy, but I will go back and definitely see if I can field some of the comments. If there's any really, ones that stand out technical wise that maybe somebody might want an answer to, I'll shoot it to you and everything. And if and when you have the time, I mean, we know how busy you are. But I have to tell you, the whole body of work on the Air series is just phenomenal. What was the height on this one, though? I have to go back to it and ask you because I didn't ask you.
I was going to say 7,500 feet. We were limited in Sydney because to get this picture, they have to hold all of the traffic leaving Sydney Airport. Oh, wow. So we had to be – the pilot I was working with, she was a phenomenal pilot who also would make brownies for the air traffic control tower people and bring them up so that when she called into ATC and said, hey – there's a little helicopter here trying to go directly over Sydney. We were directly in the line of A380s taking off, the Qantas planes. They fly straight off of Sydney and over, the Sydney airport, over Sydney or close to. And so we would literally be waiting for ATC to clear us in between takeoffs and landings or takeoffs.
Wow.
To get images like this. So I'm pretty sure this was 7,500 feet.
This is the thing, and we'll start to close off here, is that this is the thing that people have to realize, that the amount of different factors that go into doing a series like this. I'm in awe. I'm in awe of all of this, from the prep work to the actual implementation of everything to working with all the different people.
You do the customs, you do, the clearances with ATC. Berlin actually wrote an amendment to a law, some sort of amendment to allow us to photograph over Berlin at a lower altitude. The Senate did, So you do all this paperwork, all this lead work, and then you finally get up in the air with the new gear, and the clearances are very specific. Like in Sydney, we have to fly from this altitude to altitude from like 7 p.m. to 7:22 p.m. But at 7:23 p.m., we have to be from this altitude to that altitude, like crazy things like that. And you have to balance that with your creativity somehow. And then the amazing thing is that at the end of the day, the only thing that matters in the world is the weather. So we photographed over London. We got the clearest blue sky day in the history of London, the pilot said. I've never seen it blue, this clear, this clean. You are so lucky. And I went, don't say that, because as we took off for sunset, the clouds pulled in because of the lowering temperature. And it was on cue. It was like this beautiful blue sky, incredible clarity, and it still turned out great. But we never got the night shots we wanted because as the temperature fell, the pressure system came in and socketed London over. So that's the beauty of this, is people see the resulting image, and that's all they should focus on. The old newspaper saying is no one cares how the sausage is made, they just care how it tastes. No one wants to know how a paper is put together and all the stories and things that didn't go right. No, people don't care. But the profession is to go through that. Right. And understand that it's part of the process to go through all this pain. Right. And sometimes after all the pain and prep and work, you get nothing. You have nothing to show for it. And often because of things that are completely out of your control, because the battery is dead, or the weather comes in, or God knows what. It always happens. But that's what makes it so special when you do get it. When you get that moment where everything does line up. And that's also what makes you appreciate the simplicity of pulling a camera out and going out and doing street photography or going into nature with not even a tripod. Appreciate the liberty and freedom. I'll leave you with one anecdote, which was when I was a New York Times photographer, my job was to go out and find pictures of the city. And I remember being somewhere in Queens and seeing this film crew shooting this incredible scene with, the lights and the grips and the dollies and the fancy cameras and, all the extras and the actors. And there was a break, and the cinematographer came up to me, and I said, man, I really wish I could do what you're doing someday. And he goes back to me and says, man, I really wish I can do what you do right now because you have so much liberty. I didn't understand what he meant, but what he meant was, because now I've done his job, is that when you're with a crew, you have so many moving pieces that you can't move around. It's so coordinated, it's so thought through, it's permitted, the direction that you're shooting, because only those buildings are cleared, is determined by legal things, right? it's not creative. You tell them, hopefully you tell them creatively ahead of time that that's what you want. But once they clear those buildings, you can't show up and tell, you know what, I want to shoot not this way, I want to go backwards.
Right.
You can't, 'cause your whole crew, the trucks and everything are parked behind you. It's a different way of working.
Right. I love what Estras just said. Put that back up for a second. At Nat Geo, they say we don't publish excuses, we publish photos.
That's fantastic. Yeah, it's, you know, again, so he meant just appreciate your freedom. So for all of you that want to be commercial photographers or filmmakers, it's a great thing to do. Maybe a lot of stuff goes on behind the scenes. Enjoy the freedom you have.
Right,
And,
that's right.
you know, when Ezra says we don't publish excuses, you know, for young people out there or people on a crew, the most valuable people on my crew are the ones with solutions, not problems.
That's right. That's
Somebody
right. Well,
says, this happened, this is broken. I'm like, I don't want to hear the excuses. Give me solutions. Like at this point in time, I'm not here to reprimand you. I'm not here to, I don't want to hear the excuse because it doesn't help me.
right.
Why it happened. I just need to know how we can fix it so we make our.
You know, you've given us your a valuable amount of your time this morning, especially with your beautiful baby in the background, waking up and other things. And we so appreciate your time, folks. I want you to know you should check out Vincent's website, all his sites that we've been putting up here throughout the hour, and you know, get his book Air. He's working on the new series. Neil Parekh. I've been watching on Twitter for the past 15 minutes. Fascinating. I'll definitely watch on replay on my TV to see the pics on the big screen. That's the way to watch it, baby. Fascinating discussion. It has been an amazing discussion. His book, Air, get it. It's a collector's item. I have a huge collection of books. It's you know, it's going to be on my shelf. It's amazing. Now the motion one, Vince, that's going to be another series, right?
Hopefully the pandemic, you know, I had a huge job lined up for you. We're talking about the pandemic. We were going to do a whole series on it. That got killed, and I'm not sure it's ever coming back.
Right.
So that is a new series. Now, I don't know if it ever makes it into a book again. We don't know.
Okay.
You know, the problem with this stuff is it's really expensive to do this.
That's right. That's right.
You know, it's rare air up there. I like to call it my magic carpet ride because I feel like I'm floating, you know, over a city.
Right.
You know,
Well,
you know.
the other thing I want to say before we end this today is very important is know that Vincent's photos are also incredible fine art, as we know. So they're licensed and you can buy them. Some beautiful lithographs, some beautiful prints, whatever you want. Check Vincent out. Make sure you have one in your home. Who would not want to have one of these beauties in their home, Vincent? I mean, it just every time you look at it, you think of the beauty of the world. And you, sir, have brought that to us time and time again. And we love you for it. And we thank you for it. And thank you for being here.
Have a great day, guys. Thanks very much, Stephen. Thanks for
Absolutely. I'll be right back in 1 second. If you can hold on for like 2 minutes, I want to just check with you on a couple of things. Yeah. Also, before we go, let's give a lot of thanks here to Jonathan Borstein, my co-producer, for helping navigate and drive the car behind the scenes. Jonathan, thank you.
You're welcome.
I think Vincent's daughter just acknowledged you too.
She did.
So anyway,
where I get it.
Okay, there we go. Okay, so Vince, I will I will be with you in 1 second. Okay, buddy?
Sounds good.
Okay, thank you. So, folks, you have been watching the Spin It Social Hour with Vincent Laforet, one of the top photographers in the world, Air Laforet, as I call him, and many people call him, doing incredible photography, high-def work, filmmaking. Check him out on all his sites. There's so much to learn about him that I haven't even gotten to. But what can I do? I can't do it all in an hour and 15 minutes. So one of the things that we're going to do, though, is we're going to check out a few things here for promos. And I'm going to let you know, first of all, about a great social media course with my colleague Sri Srinivasan and our DigiMentors group, with which I am a part-time producer and many other things. And we have many great things coming about, but we're doing phenomenal work with organizations all around the world producing these types of live streams. But sign up for his Fundamentals of Social Media with Muckrack at mrack.co/social and learn and get certified through Sri and Muckrack Academy. You can't go wrong. It's a LinkedIn booster shot, as I say, okay? And I helped produce that show, that course. Directed it. So check it out. Check out my directorial work on live streaming work. It's not what Vincent's is, but hey, you know, I'm doing my thing. And then also tomorrow, please join Sri for the Sunday NYT read along with another ex-colleague of ours, Elaine Soliano, who's a contributing writer and former Paris bureau chief for the New York Times. And she's an amazing writer for the New York Times. So check them out tomorrow. Sri's NYT read along. As we say, we read the New York Times every Sunday like a bunch of crazy people. But we get to the news and everything else that's going out there in the world. Become part of our NYT read along family. Finally, another great show that's being produced on the air every week. She's on Call with Dr. Sujana and Dr. Marina talking about COVID and many, many other things, medical and lifestyle-wise, that we need to know about. And then, folks, so check She's on Call out tomorrow at 11 following the read-along. And then next week, wow, I'm really honored once again to bring on another former New York Times great and somebody who's done everything from shooting high corporate clients to the covers of Sports Illustrated. If you saw a great cover of Serena Williams recently in this beautiful silver outfit, looking like the queen and the incredible pro that she is, and powerful woman that she is, this man right here, Jeffrey Salter, shot it, and he's going to be coming on the show next week from Miami, and it's going to be a great hour with him. So please join us next Saturday, August 15, 10 a.m. right here. And I have to tell you, it's been an incredible hour and 15 minutes. Thank you so much for your time. I wish everyone well. Look me up, Stephen Kaplan, Spin It Social. I'm available for work, and I'm out here doing great stuff too. So we all need more work. I look forward to connecting with you too on LinkedIn and everywhere. Thank you very much for your time, folks. Number one thing, be well. I wish you well. Take care now. Peace. Oh, sometimes it takes a second.